Hey guys, what's happening? So now, with us recently finishing our talk about the Dark Gods from the Dark Multiverse, I felt like it was only right to go from there into the new Justice League Dark. And mainly because, like I mentioned in the previous video, a lot of the things that come up in Justice League Dark, they also connect directly to the Dark Gods event, along with Dark Knight's Metal and Justice League No Justice, both of which we already covered, and I'll leave a link in the description if you need to check any of that out or just get a little refresher. But as far as Justice League Dark in DC Rebirth, this is one of the new teams that is coming together because of the events of Dark Knight's Metal, with the source wall being broken, and that causing much larger problems on a huge scale. And as a result, you have the Justice League needing to expand on a crazy level. Like for space, you have Justice League Odyssey, which includes your welterweight dark side, much lighter than what we're used to. And I got a link down in the description talking about how that happened. So if you're new here and you're new to that, don't feel bad, I got you covered. But there's a team that's handling space. So for Justice League Dark, they're the team that deals with magic. And that's mainly what we're going to focus on for this video, with it taking place shortly after Justice League No Justice and dealing with the epidemic of magic dying in the DC universe. And for everything else, you have your main Justice League, which we'll dive into much deeper in another video. But for this one, I wanted to focus more on the coming together of this new Justice League Dark team that we're getting in DC Rebirth. And so now, for those of you who are fans of the original Justice League Dark with Constantine, Deadman, Dr. Mist, first thing I want to say is that DC doesn't throw this away, and with the new team coming together for a new purpose, and DC Rebirth adding more to the history and the origin of magic itself in the DC universe, this actually causes a lot of these characters to pop back up going forward in Justice League Dark in DC Rebirth. Because much like we talked about before, DC Rebirth is like a soft reboot, which in my opinion is the best way to reboot in most situations, especially when you have great storytelling in the previous series. Because in that case, it's a win-win, because you keep the readers who love the previous stories, but you also create a new opportunity for new readers to jump in. And as a result, this increases the number of readers overall. And that's a good thing any way you look at it. But as far as starting our talk about Justice League Dark, the best place I would say to really start would be the conclusion of Justice League No Justice. And at the end of that story, there was a very important panel showing a conversation between Wonder Woman and Zatanna, and they were having a discussion about how the energy trees remain even after Cyborg removing the seeds which they needed to do to defeat the Omega Titans. But the reason why I say that this conversation is important is because Wonder Woman pointed out at that time that she had felt a connection to the Tree of Wonder, and that someone was keeping it there as a beacon that extended that connection throughout all of magic. And in that conversation, Wonder Woman was trying to get Zatanna to help her figure this out. But because in the DC universe, those who practice magic and those who are a part of magic, as in, their powers either come from some kind of magical source or they have particular weapons that use magic, like these two groups, they do not mix, because the witches and the warlocks, the ones who practice magic, they mainly stick to their own. And that was Zatanna's argument, because after the events of Justice League No Justice, she went on to continue her tour, separating herself from Wonder Woman and the Justice League, and even to the extent of ignoring Wonder Woman's calls and refusing to help Wonder Woman with her investigation, really just leaving her to figure it out on her own. And part of that does have to do with the witches and the warlocks who practice magic really just saying, hey, if we have an issue, we'll figure it out. But that also piles on top of things that Zatanna is trying to figure out for herself. But what ends up happening on her tour, a simple pulling a rabbit out of the hat trick goes terribly wrong. And even saying it that went terribly wrong, that's an understatement in itself. Because one, she reaches in and pulls out a bloody rabbit instead of a regular rabbit, but on top of that, this crazy tendril creature comes out, reaching into the audience, and they think it's a part of the show, but it starts grabbing people and they're like, okay, maybe not. But it's here where we quickly get that momentum coming from No Justice with the arrival of Wonder Woman. And she's not just here because these things started popping up, but as it turns out, we find out that Wonder Woman is here to talk to Zatanna face to face because she hasn't been returning her calls. And as a result, she came just to talk to her, but she had a spear and a shield with her as well, because she's Wonder Woman. But with Wonder Woman coming there and actually helping out fighting these things off, we notice that Zatanna's magic only makes them stronger, which I believe is very important, mainly because Zatanna's spells are spoken backwards. And I do believe that's one of the many individual pieces of this huge puzzle that is also going to play a huge part later on. But while they're here and Wonder Woman finally has the opportunity to talk to her, she realizes that Zatanna has been doing the same type of investigation without her. And Wonder Woman's not the only person who's more or less figured this out. Because not too long after their talk, we get the arrival of Constantine, and he kind of just pops up on her way to the House of Mystery. And he's here for one because he heard what happened, but also because he's already aware of other people practicing magic losing control of their magic, and there are some pretty bad cases. But I like that Constantine shows up here because this is a callback to the original Justice League Dark, because one, it's pretty obvious that these two still share a history, with them being together at one point. But it also pulls a couple beats from Swamp Thing Volume 2 when Constantine convinced Zatanna's father, Zatara, to go up against the Great Evil Beast, which is how her father was killed during that seance. And instead of her being burned, her father took it unto himself, sparing her life. And that event was the main thing that pushed the two of them apart. In addition to Baron Winters no longer allowing Constantine to come around Zatara's theater, and in a way kind of telling him to stay away from anything that had to do with him. But as far as Constantine knowing that this threat is serious, he's gonna do what he can, even if it's from a distance. Even though he can't go to Zatara's theater, and he just has to pop up on Zatara on her way to a meeting at Wintergate Mansion, which he wasn't invited to, for obvious reasons. But his main point when they're having this discussion is that whatever is going on is pretty serious. And if Wonder Woman is trying to help, let her help. Don't be stuck in the old methods and the old rules, because things are changing and we may need to change as well. But after the talk, when Zatanna goes inside of Wintergate Mansion, we see that this meeting is being held by Jason Blood, who is the human host of Etrigan the Demon, who we saw a little bit of in Justice League No Justice just recently, and I hope we get a lot more of in Justice League Dark. But he's holding this meeting, bringing everybody together in spite of their differences, because his perspective on it is very similar to what we just talked about with Constantine, because Blood understands that everyone needs to come together to face what is coming. And a lot of people are here, Zariel, Black Orchid, but Zatanna picks up pretty quickly that somebody's missing. And even though he's not there, he's eavesdropping by using a plant that is sitting in the corner. And of course, I'm talking about Swamp Thing. And because of the gravity of everything that's going on, Zatanna is pissed. So she goes out to find him, which takes her to his location in Salem, Massachusetts at the Tree of Wonder. And this, as far as Swamp Thing, is one of those reasons that I really like his involvement with Justice League Dark, because of his capability to communicate with the tree, and then the tree's connection with Wonder Woman, and then his history with the original members. I just feel like this story would just be done completely wrong if he wasn't here. But either way, Zatanna, she just takes the little flower pot and she just chucks it at him, man. Like, why weren't you at that meeting? Like, magic is dying and you're over here with the Tree of Wonder just like, look at the birds, look at the trees. Like, get with the program. But Swamp Thing not attending wasn't because of any lack of interest. He's aware of the conversation they were having, and he's also aware of Wonder Woman's solicitation to put together a team, but he doesn't really agree with either. But what's really interesting with Swamp Thing here is that even though he cannot control the tree, because the tree is not of the green, but what he can do is communicate with it. And so, kind of in a nonchalant manner, Zatanna's like, well, tell the tree that I'm angry. And that's really just her, how she feels in response to everything that's going on. But when Swamp Thing tells the tree what she said, the tree responds back and she sees her father, Zatara. And it's crazy because he only has a short time to give her this message. But he is able to tell her that what is happening right now is only the beginning, and that the darkness that destroyed him was only a small fraction of what is yet to come. And that's a big statement by itself, because the beast was huge. But what he also goes on to tell her is that there is one who may have the power to fight back, but they will more likely speed up the process, because the original owners of magic are coming, and the old order, being those that discovered a portion of magic on Earth, or those that hold that title in present day, they're not going to be able to stop this. But while he's telling her this by way of the Tree of Wonder, which once again is connected to all magic, which more or less means that they're communicating on an open line, he tells her that the Upside Down Man is nearly here. And just before Swamp Thing pulls her out, she sees him. She sees the Upside Down Man, who's more or less like he'll have to eat everyone in order to get it back. Like, dude is mad creepy, like straight out of a horror film. But that'll do it for this one, guys, and trust me, this is just the beginning of our talk about Justice League Dark, because the twists and the deliveries in this series will literally make your hair stand up, or your vines, whichever you got, you know, I don't judge. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and we will literally talk about this in the next one. Alright, later.